Hello and welcome to Career Conversations, brought to you by the Monash Health Science Society. My name is Arabella.
And my name's Sam.
And we will be your co-hosts for today's show. This podcast we will be exploring different careers in health.
And today we are joined by the wonderful Nicole Witt, who graduated from a Bachelor of Public Health Science at Monash University and is now working as a Community Development Officer at Kirrip Aboriginal Corporation. Welcome, Nicole.
Thank you. Just before we get into the interview, I'd actually like to acknowledge the people of the Kulin Nation, and those are the traditional owners of the land that each of us are meeting on today. I acknowledge and respect elders past, present and emerging, and I would like to thank them for their continuing culture and contribution to life and people of the land today. I'd also like to acknowledge any other Aboriginal people with us today.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so let's get right into the questions. So tell us a little bit about yourself. So what made you want to study Bachelor of Health Science and Public Health, and what has that led you on to now?
So I, as mentioned by Sam before, I graduated from the Bachelor of Public Health Science at Monash last year. I'm not sure if that specific stream is still active, but I took an interest in public health and health science broadly because of the community kind of aspect to health rather than that one-on-one clinical role that you would see in a role such as nursing or paramedicine. So I didn't go into this course straight from high school. I went in as a mature age student, and I actually didn't really know what it was until I started researching degrees in health, because I knew that health was of an interest of mine, and I wanted to pursue something in that field, but I just didn't know what it was. And what I liked about the public health and health sciences degrees were that they were quite broad. So they opened up a few different avenues that I could then kind of pursue or research more as the course progressed.
So did you know that Aboriginal health was a sector you would like to move into initially, or?
No, I never had a specific community in mind that I wanted to work with. I am Aboriginal, however, it hadn't really occurred to me to go work specifically with an Aboriginal community, and I was recently on maternity leave from my old work, and a role came up that's local to me, so it's with my local Aboriginal community and as a community development officer. So I was kind of like, oh, well, that's sort of perfect. It'd be a great entry into the health field. I was previously in medical research, so I applied for it and thankfully was successful, and yeah, I love it. And I actually can't see myself working outside of Aboriginal community now. Perfect for me.
So, from my understanding, or I guess what I want to ask is, so is it more like quite a hands-on approach in tackling those public health issues within those communities? And could you tell us a little bit more about that?
Sure. So Kirrip itself, we are a little house in Melton South, and we provide a culturally safe place for community to connect socially, culturally, to celebrate culture, and to promote self-determination and healing. And we service the Melton and surrounding areas. There's no one we would turn away. But yeah, we mostly, just because of where we are and distance, most people that visit us are from the Melton area. So we run a variety of programs. In a pre-COVID world, we would run a lot of face-to-face programs. So men's group and women's group, elders group, out of carers, so people who care for Aboriginal children that are that have been taken from their biological parents. So we support the foster parents through a group. What else? We have like a homework club and youth group. And since COVID hit, I joined the team since COVID. And in that time, we've more moved into a space of sort of outreach and support. So we deliver care packages to community who are vulnerable. So perhaps they've lost their job and struggling financially, or there could be a variety of reasons. They might have been in a vulnerable position even prior to COVID. And we also partner with Food Bank, who you've probably heard of, and we pick up a big delivery from them every couple of weeks, and community can come and pick up some food parcels. And we offer financial support as well. So since COVID has come in, we have been supporting community that way, and all of the face-to-face programs had stopped. But since I've come into the role, it's given them the capacity again to start rolling into those programs in a virtual format. So we are a very small organisation. It's just myself and my employer, Peter, who is the executive officer. And there's usually a lot of volunteers at Kirrip, but with COVID, that's no longer possible to have the volunteers in to help, which is why a lot of those programs had to pause. So at the moment online we are running an elders group. So that's for elders, so aunties and uncles of the Aboriginal community, and anyone that is an older Aboriginal, so 45 and above. And we offer that social connection and that cultural connection just on a Zoom chat. And we do bingo, and I love doing bingo, although I get sick of hearing my voice calling out all those numbers. But that the community is really loving that, because it's just giving them something to look forward to and something fun, because everyone, as you know, is just stuck at home and not having that connection with their mates as much as they might have previously. And we've just started up a youth group. So long-term aim is to have a structured youth group that's broken up into 3 different age groups, and they will go through and have kind of milestones to meet that are around culture. So it might be, for example, making a shield, so using the bark off a tree to make a shield, and a lot of cultural things like that. So we'll have elders come in and teach these things, and that is about creating that connection back to culture, and it will promote things like healing, there's intergenerational trauma, and just creating good social cultural connections. So we're only in the early stages of that, and it's just being held online, so we can't do a lot of that hands-on stuff that is necessary. But it's, at the moment, we just want to kind of break the ice and have the youth get to know each other, and set some groundwork. I don't know where you guys are at in your career, in your courses, but do a bit of questioning of them, so consultation of them, and say, what do you want to get out of the program, and what is it about your culture that you would like to know more of?
Like, I can imagine, I'm sure you had some ideas about the issues that the Aboriginal community were facing, and hence why you have a passion to step into that role. But what has changed since you started working with the community? What are some of the issues that have, I guess, really hit home and that you hope to see improve?
That's a great question. I suppose we were taught a lot, obviously, in university about the gap, closing the gap, and how there are these great differences between the Indigenous and non-Indigenous populations in a variety of health concerns. And whilst that's true, for me, since moving into this role, one thing I never knew about was the struggles around children in out-of-home care. So there's still a lot of children being removed from their homes, which is really devastating, and a lot of it justified, but some of it absolutely not so much. And there's ways that we could support them to prevent that from happening. Because, as you can imagine, the health consequences, mental and physical, that would be associated with being removed from your family and placed with a foster family are huge. So it's something that was really highlighted to me, something I wasn't aware of, and we weren't really taught about a lot in the degree. And I suppose, that degree, public health degree, doesn't have that social work sort of aspect, so I wouldn't have really expected to learn about it. And homelessness and struggling with maintaining or obtaining rental properties and keeping them. So, as you know, home, like where you live, is one of those social determinants that is really important and vital for good health. So my boss and I both share a passion in trying to help communities secure property that they can live in safely, and not just going, oh, here's a house, and walking away, but supporting them in things such as whether it be budgeting, so they can keep that house because of, learning how to maintain your bills and rent, and perhaps even cooking skills, how to meal prep or plan and have some basic cooking skills. And then there's things like cleaning, or, that kind of stuff that a lot of people might have grown up with, being taught from your parents. But if you haven't been, or perhaps, so you might have not have grown up with that, I guess, role model as such, but also you might have been in circumstances that removed you. So like family violence, for example, that's big in all populations in Australia, not just the Aboriginal community. That's quite broadly known. So you've also got the women who are escaping family violence, and a small portion of men who are also escaping family violence, who need that support setting up a new home that they feel safe in. So yeah.
So do you have do you have any groups for men and women suffering from domestic violence? Is that something you're able to provide for that community?
No, we have a counsellor who we can refer on to, but as a community organisation, we don't specifically have a family violence program. But there are organisations that are specific for Aboriginal people or Aboriginal women suffering family violence issues or domestic violence issues, such as Elizabeth Morgan House. And there's also plenty of other organisations that will have some aspect, whether they be a non-Indigenous organisation that have a stream towards Aboriginal people, or it just might be broadly a non-specific organisation that targets domestic violence. But you've got, I guess, a range of programs. So there might be ones that are targeting behaviour change to keep the family together, but work on how to address the issues. But then you've got the other end of it, where you're helping the people who are either a victim or a perpetrator, for lack of a better word. Perpetrator I don't like, but you get programs to support them after all the issues have occurred.
So I'm sure seeing these these issues around you all the time, but also on the positive note, just seeing how your organisation is changing the lives of so many, and small things, offering just groups, just getting people together in COVID. Yeah. I'm sure it's just so rewarding for you.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's important to remember that that social aspect of life is super important, and people, particularly in today's climate, where everyone's limited to their screen essentially, and besides a couple of hours of being able to get out for a walk a day. But a lot of community can't do that. They might have health issues that prevent them from being able to go for a walk. So they're at higher risk, so they feel like they have to stay home more, because if they were to catch COVID, then the consequences for them are much greater. So being able to do something as simple as providing them an online room to chat to others in, it's actually great. It's quite heartwarming, and they are amazingly resilient people. There's always, despite what's going on, and they all start off the conversation going, oh, it's been, another boring week, or been struggling, etc. They are still able to, by the end of that conversation, joke around and all of that. So, yeah.
No, thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing, the impacts of COVID on your work, and some really important health issues, that you're both passionate about and are really common at the moment. On a slightly different note, just to, I guess, learn a little bit more about yourself,
Sure.
What sort of things inspire you? What brings you joy? What have you been doing in COVID to keep you sane?
What does inspire me? So, well, I have a 13-month-old daughter. So your perspectives change when you become a mother, and I'm sure many of you are a long way off even considering that. But I want the world to be kind of a happy and healthy one for her. So, a world that provides her plenty of equal opportunities. So, I guess broadly that's what inspires me. But on a day-to-day basis, I'd say I'm often inspired by those around me, and I guess I kind of touched on it already, but I don't mean people who are going out and achieving, great things like curing cancer, which would be great, but people who are just doing those little things that impact people's day-to-day life, and whether it be a friendly conversation or driving someone to their medical appointments because they can't get there otherwise. So those sort of things, those little stories are quite inspiring to read about and see or be part of. What am I doing recently? I feel like my personal life has been lacking a tremendous amount of joy. But the reopening of playgrounds has been the highlight of it. It's just, mum life again. With the warmer weather, that's been nice. And I guess I've been just chatting a lot with my friends on social media, and being able to go out for walks with my friends when the weather's good. That is a great way to break up the monotony of being at home, and working part-time is also a great way to break up. I'm not feeling the consequences of COVID as much this lockdown as I was in the first one, where I was home full-time.
Yeah, that's really good to hear that, despite being very busy, you've still been able to enjoy the little things like some sunshine or time on the playground. I know that that's been really good for a lot of families that I'm involved with as well. They've said, absolute highlight of at the moment. And a slightly different question again, but what strengths of the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander community have really helped with, I guess, health and getting through COVID and things like that? We talked about a lot of the issues, but what strengths are there in the community that you've noticed?
They actually really are resilient people. So they've got that. Obviously, they have their down days, everyone does, but the mental resilience, like they're able to look forward to what's about to come, the changes that are about to come. And I'd say a lot of that comes down to culture. Like in the Aboriginal community, they really bond with each other, with other people who are Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders. And I think having that kind of shared history, they really thrive off that and being able to talk. And a lot of them are passionate about Aboriginal movement, towards positive things. And I actually think a lot of them are resilient through that as well. So seeing the things that have changed and things to look forward to for changing in regards to Aboriginal rights and also just broadly with COVID. So yeah, I'll stick with that strength. I think resilience is their strength.
Yeah, that's a great one.
I'll just add, like, as you know, they're like the longest, existing people on Earth. So I think that shows how resilient they are.
Yeah, definitely. That requires a lot of resilience for sure.
Yeah.
And you mentioned then in terms of like Aboriginal rights and things like that, does your workplace have much to do with those movements and things like that, or is it separate?
Like, yes, in the sense that we might share posts on social media or have events for things like Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Children's Day and NAIDOC Week and things like that. But we try not to get too political and like picking sides with political parties, and that's not really what we're about. And yes, we want to advocate for Aboriginal community. We want to communicate for all of us and advocate for all of us, but we are there to support community more than go picking political sides and getting involved heavily in that, because I think it's hard, politics are hard and you can't please everybody. And but in saying that, pretty much everyone who's Aboriginal have very similar views surrounding Aboriginal health and well-being and rights. Yeah.
Yeah, so I was just wondering, so this job, working in health in general, whether you're a doctor, nurse, or working in those communities one-on-one, what are some of the core, core skills that you need help you to do your job the best that you can to help these people?
Did you say core skills? Sorry, kind of cut out.
Yeah, core skills.
So communication skills, I'm going to say, particularly with the current climate. So people need an open ear to talk to. They just need someone to yarn to, and in a judge-free manner. And I would say that applies to any field at the moment, because a lot of people are having, struggles, or they're just feeling a little bit isolated and needed someone to chat to. But I would say this again for any field in health or most jobs in general, communication isn't just about talking at somebody. So it's also about listening. So being there to bounce ideas off, or just being there to sympathise or empathise and give ideas and support. And then you've also got kind of your non-verbal communication that you consider, like I communicate with community and I communicate with other organisations through things like email or social media, and I write a newsletter quite regularly for the community, and I'm on the phone to people as well. So yeah, communication isn't limited to face-to-face communication. And I was going to say something. No, that's gone. But yeah, verbal, oral, face-to-face, body language. So I do not see much of community face-to-face, apart from when they're kind of coming in to pick up something, some sort of assistance. But, it's important to have that correct body language. So showing that you are engaging with them. I think it's one to, if you're just listening to them and going, but not really looking at them or facing them, or if you got your arms crossed type thing, you're going to seem like you're not really there for them. You're just waiting for them to finish and move along. So body language, I think, is a really important communication style.
Yeah, I can also imagine, with the different age groups, the way you approach and the way you interact with those age groups must be quite different as well.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
or, you're communicating with so many different groups within that community be a challenge as well.
Yeah, it's not too challenging, I have to admit. I'd say the biggest challenge is the technology side of things. So trying to get our elders online has been a little bit bumpy. We've got there, so it's just helping them navigate Zoom, and that would probably be the biggest challenge we've faced with that kind of COVID communication. Is getting everybody online, and not everybody has access to internet at home or has a computer or a laptop or anything. So, yeah.
So, are there any other skills which are vital for your job, or that you've seen has improved in your time working in the community?
I would say that you need to adapt, I guess. I've come out of university recently and had all X, Y, Z ideas and all these great grand ideas and thoughts and all that's really great, but it's not necessarily going to be perfect for the people that you're working with. So you need to learn how to adapt to work with that community, whether it be, say, you might go off and work with, say, a refugee community, but the ideas you had may not mesh in with with their culture or something along those lines. So you need to be willing to, have the ability to change your thought processes and do a lot of research and see what kind of ways you can tackle things that are different to what you might have learned in school. Because often, I guess, when you do an assignment, you're targeting one community, and so you might remember that program that you thought of and you researched and you wrote an assignment about for that community, but it doesn't mean it's going to work with another community.
Definitely. Well, I'm sure working in this community is like rewarding in many ways, and we might have we touched on this, but what are your favorite parts of your job? Like, what gets you up in the morning and just keeps inspiring you?
I love my job. Honestly, I can wholeheartedly say that I love it. And I have had many jobs in the past which I've liked, but it was still had that feeling of, oh, it's Monday, I got to go to work type thing. But at the moment, I don't have that, and I love that. I love that. I don't dread going to work. I actually really enjoy it. And I can't say there's one part in general that I like more than the others. I just think that this job has turned out to be a great fit for me. Broadly, the people that I work with are great. The community are great. They've welcomed me in. Like I said to you at the beginning, that yes, I am Aboriginal, but I didn't know my Aboriginal community around here. So they've been great and welcoming. So I enjoy the work itself and I enjoy the people in general. So I can't give you one short little answer. I can just say that find a job that you love, and it doesn't matter what the tasks are necessarily, the day-to-day little things. It's overall just rewarding working in a job that you love.
Definitely.
Great. And you've talked a little bit about, I guess, the different projects with, your bingo for your elders and your youth group that you're starting.
Yep.
But what does a typical day or week look like for you? Is it kind of the same thing each day? Does it differ?
There's a little bit of week-to-week similarities. So I work 3 days a week. Tuesday is my fun. I call it my fun day. In that, that's when I have all my groups. So I run the elders group, and then we do bingo, and that's community-wide for anyone who wants to participate. And then we do youth group, and collectively they probably take up maybe 4 or 5 hours of my day. So around that, I'd be preparing for that. And by preparing, I'm might be putting messages out on social media to say, come and engage in this program, sending out reminders to some people who might forget, and then other things, so like that carry on or promote with other days. So on a Wednesday, might do, say, some grant writing, newsletter writing. I'm often on our social media engaging with the community. Every second Tuesday, Wednesday, we have food bank, so I'll be preparing food parcels for community to pick up. On Fridays, my mornings usually like office work, so continued with whether there's a grant we're applying for, or might be writing up or researching ideas and for, say, youth group, some cultural activities and elders who could deliver that thing. So I'd be doing some research and budgeting around that type of stuff. And in the afternoon, every Friday, we drive out to community and deliver about 25 food parcels to those who are vulnerable, so people who have been referred to us from other health programs. So like the community nurses might say, this family needs some help, could you please deliver food parcel to them?
Great. And I guess you also touched on this a little bit briefly with COVID, but what does the future of jobs like yours look like, and what's changing in this sector?
It's hard to say because I'm fortunate that I have an ongoing role and I don't plan on going anywhere anytime soon. And as I said, I really do love my job. But in saying that, I will eventually set some goals for my future self to progress in my career. But in the short term, my role will change. My time at Kirrip has been entirely within the COVID world. So when we return to COVID normal life, I will be starting face-to-face interactions with our groups. So that'll be new to me. I've never facilitated a group as such, apart from kind of, I guess doing uni work. So I suspect my role will become a lot more intense as I'll be facilitating those groups in the flesh. And many of the groups that are on pause will recommence. So carers group, for example. So that'll be a whole new world for me. So I'll have to do some, as we look like we'll be entering that area. I'll be looking at going and researching and seeing what Kirrip did previously in those programs and what we can do moving forward. And generally what's changing in the sector is what I'm hearing a lot of from other programs and other organisations, and what we are experiencing is a lot of support, like emergency relief. There's just a lot of need for that at the moment, and I'm sure you're well aware, a lot of people have lost their jobs or on reduced income, and there's a lot of struggles around parents having to stay home to homeschool and things like that. So I'd say and I'd add to that perhaps there's some health issues around not just COVID, but people being afraid to access healthcare for other reasons, because they're afraid of, say, COVID. Oh, if I go to the doctor's clinic, is there someone that's going to be sick there? Will I then get more sick?
Yeah. And you mentioned that I guess a lot of this will be new just because, you've started this role in a COVID environment, but
yeah.
Will it involve like any new training, or will it be learning on the job? Like, how do you think you will grow in order to meet these new challenges?
I think it will be learning on the job, and I think it worked out sort of perfectly for me that I started during COVID, because I've been able to meet some community online. So some people will come into these groups in that face-to-face manner and we'll already know each other. And I've been able to get gauge what people want a little bit, and what they want to see Kirrip offer, and what outcomes kind of we need to kind of aim for. But I've also got a very supportive boss, and he doesn't expect me to know everything yet. And he will talk me, like, he's very happy for me to just throw a million questions at him, and he'll help me, whether that be program community development specific or whether it be culture specific, because like I said, I've kind of touched on earlier, I have not been immersed in the community here, Aboriginal community here. So I've always known that I'm Aboriginal, and when I was growing up I had little bits to do with Aboriginal community, but probably in my 20s I wasn't really engaged. So my cultural knowledge is not as high as it could be. So my boss is really supportive in that, by helping support my knowledge growth there, and also my knowledge growth in community development generally.
Yeah, and I like the point that you raised, I guess, about that not being necessarily the community that you were immersed in when you were younger.
Yeah.
Could you touch briefly, I guess, on that and the differences between communities, and why it's important that, I guess, now you really engage in that community before working with them?
Yeah. I suppose I'm gathering by your question, you know that Aboriginal people are made up of a very, very large number of different little of languages, for one, and customs. And whilst there's a lot of overlap, there's also a lot of distinguishing things, and whether that be around Dreamtime and how they do their art, or totems, and where I've always grown up in this area. So this is where I am, is on Wurundjeri land. And so one thing about community, which if you ever go somewhere where there's a lot of Aboriginal people meeting, you'll hear them they'll say their name and then the country. So I'm a Gunai woman, which means my family is actually from the Gippsland area. And so while I've never grown up there, that is still my land, my country. So that's one thing that's been great to learn about community. But I think a lot of the ways you would work with community, you don't have to be from, I could go to Queensland, for example, and still communicate and work with Aboriginal community, because there's a lot of people who are dispossessed from their land. So a lot of people move about, but also there's a lot of that dispossession. A lot of it goes back to history where, say, my family's from Gunai, but stolen gen and all of that, like land removal, has meant that they don't necessarily live there anymore, and their subsequent generations have moved and lived elsewhere. So I think it's really important to be aware that there is that history there, and I think Australia's working hard and to educate again on, or educate correctly on that, and so you don't need to be specifically from that land to work with the people of that land, but you need to be aware of customs and cultures, and say methods of healing, that men and women heal differently, and you would do groups for them separately, and just and consult, like always you ask an elder. So if there's something you want to do on that person's land, or if you want to know their language or use their language, you speak to an elder of that land. So I guess there's little things that you just need to be aware of when working with the community. Don't go it alone. Always ask for permission, and always just do your research and reach out to. Usually there's a land council, like there's Wurundjeri land council, who the elders run and can provide relevant information for that area that you're working on.
Thank you.
So what advice would you give for current public health science students at Monash?
I would dive into any opportunity that you're presented with. So to just, public health, like I mentioned, is so broad. You need to know, is it health promotion that you like, or policy or research? Do you want to work for a non-for-profit, or do you want to work for a council? So like when I studied, I did the summer vacation research program, over at St Kilda Road. Do they still run that? Do you know what I'm talking about? The School of Public Health, the Medicine Summer Vacation Research Program, I think it's called. It's like a 4-week full-time thing where you get placed with a research group or a postdoc, and you learn a lot of things around public health research. That's really great. I recommend applying for that if they're still doing it. I'm not sure if they would. It's usually over in November, December. And then, I was the secretary of the Monash Health Science Committee. Then I undertook the Health Promotion Practicum unit, which is in the 3rd year. There's also that research one. So if you feel like you might want to experience research or health promotion, pick that. And I'd pick the Health Promotion unit simply because I'd done the research, the summer research program. So I wanted to have a feel for the other end of public health. Honestly, take advantage of any of the opportunities that come across your door. And I know that it's tempting to be like, oh, it's summer break, I don't want to do that. Yes, but you'll have summer for the rest of your life, like every year for the rest of your life. So just forego that one summer. And honestly, I know it's probably been drilled into you plenty of times. And let me do it once more. Networking. It's so important. Telling people your interests, like just going and meeting someone in, if there's an event on, just go introduce yourself, tell them your interests and your skills, learn about what their interests and skills are, where they're working for, and this will open up doors. And for example, I was fortunate to work for the Respectful Communities unit at Monash last year. I lost another summer there, but it was well worth it. And so it was more of a health promotion angle around sexual health. And so we were, that was through me communicating with another student who she really knew at that point, and I was really interested in sexual health. And her networking skills allowed her to meet someone who worked at Respectful Communities. And so she said, do you know anyone who's interested in sexual health? And then so both of us ended up working casually with around O Week and putting out a lot of sexual health information and activities. And that was such fun work. Honestly, I loved it. And it changed my mind because initially I was more interested in research, and then I was kind of like, actually, maybe this more community-based role is, and around that prevention thing is more suited to me. And here I am working in community.
So touching on that a little bit, is there any way that Monash students that are interested in your community can get involved?
At my current work, do you mean?
Yeah, just getting involved in the Aboriginal community in general.
Yep. You've tagged me on Instagram and LinkedIn, didn't you? So feel free to, if anyone's interested in working with Aboriginal community, please reach out. And I will provide advice, or if I know any opportunities going, I'm happy to be that person to bounce ideas or answer any questions. Over at Kirrip, we're in Melton, which is opposite end of Melbourne to Monash. So I don't know if anyone's from the western suburbs. I am, so it was fine for me. But if anyone's looking for volunteer positions, like it's hard to say at the moment because of COVID. We can't really have people in the doors, but it's worth making that connection. So if you want to reach out to me, and then I'll know if there's a position that's available in the future that I go, oh, I remember so-and-so messaged me and they wanted to get an experience, and I'd be likely to hit you up. So just even recently we've had a few roles that have gone for similar organisations nearby, and my boss has said to me, do you know anybody who would be interested? And there've been Aboriginal specific roles, so Aboriginal identified. So I had to say no at that point because, well, I knew one person who graduated around the same time as me, but she's now at the Australian Institute of Health and Welfare in Sydney, the lucky duck. So it's a grad job. So that's the thing with working with Aboriginal community. You can be non-Aboriginal and work with community, but a lot of jobs are Aboriginal identified for a lot of the reasons kind of I highlighted earlier around culture.
Yeah. So lastly, have you reached out, has your community reached out to the Aboriginal community at Monash, and will you try and get Monash actively involved in helping and volunteering, just getting students on board with communities like yours?
No, we haven't. Not that I'm aware of. Not even the time I've been at Kirrip. The chairperson of our board, she is a lecturer at Vic Uni, and so there's a bit of a connection between us and the Victorian University Aboriginal unit. But we have not had, as far as I'm aware, great close communication with Monash. But that is a really great valid point, and we should probably create a connection there where if they have students that are in health or interested in health and community, that they could reach out to us and say, have you got the capacity to take someone on or give some experience? And I think that's
I'm sure like you, I'm sure there's many people who identify as Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander that maybe weren't as connected and they wouldn't, find that community. So I think that would be valuable to many of those.
Yep, spot
on. Well, I think that's all we've got to ask for today. But it was really really interesting and a really nice chat for a Saturday morning. That's all we have.
Thanks for accommodating my strange schedule.
That's all we have time for. So thank you, Nicole, for joining us today and sharing your experiences of your degree and what's been going on in your career so far, and tailoring it to COVID and still, helping those communities.
Thank you. Good luck with the rest of your degrees, and hope it all goes smoothly. And hopefully you set some, you've got your goals and you reach them. So whether it be more study or straight into the workforce, good luck.
Thanks again, Nicole, and thanks to everyone who's listening to this podcast. Stay tuned and join us again next time for more career conversations.